Before they rose up for freedom, they were fighting for jobs. But could an economic crisis be putting Tunisia's progress at risk?
Absolutely, it could fail, because democracy without social dignity, without social rights, would not mean anything to people.
We travel across Tunisia to find out if life has improved 8 years after the fall of Ben Ali. I'm Imran Garta, and today's newsmaker is Tunisia's struggling economy. It's exactly 1 month since Abdelrazak Zorgi sat on a bench in the Tunisian city of Kasserine. He calmly spoke about his concerns over the lack of jobs in his community, all while streaming his speech on social media. He said, "Today I will start a revolution of my own." Moments later, he set himself on fire. In the wake of the Arab Spring, Tunisians were promised that the fall of President Ben Ali would mean democratic freedoms, and those freedoms would mean more jobs. But 8 years on, unemployment remains high. Jobs are rare for both experienced workers and young people with university degrees, not to mention the many without a padded resume. So, when it comes to revolutions, is Tunisia the success it's made out to be? Natalie Perhernan went to Tunisia to find out.
البطالة، نحكي على البطالة اللي ما عندهمش مورد رزق، اللي ما عندهمش باش ياكلوا في كروشهم، كي جو يعملوا لهنا احتجاجات تولينا إرهاب.
We're heading to Kasserine to find out why journalist Abdelrazak Zorgi set himself on fire in December. In 2010, the same act took place in the nearby city of Sidi Bouzid, and it irrevocably shaped the Arab world's political landscape. So why is something like this happening again in Tunisia? This nation is often described as the success story of the Arab Spring. Kasserine is considered a cradle of the Tunisian revolution, but many people here feel like they've been left behind. The social and economic rewards people were expecting to come with democracy appear a long way off. That's the message Abdelrazak Zorgi wanted to draw attention to in one of the most horrific ways imaginable.
نداء للبطالة القصرنية. بالنسبة لي أنا راهو اليوم باش نعمل ثورة وحدي. واللي يحب يجي معي يساندني مرحبا، خاطر هذه باش نعمل احتجاجات وحدي، باش نشعلها وحدي، باش نشعل روحي معناتها.
كلف بي هو في الدار يقول لي يما ما دامني نحذاك ما تخافيش، وهو يتوهك وليد العمال على ربي، إن شاء الله ربي يظهر الحق.
Zorgi's family believe he wanted people to know about the difficulty of life in Kasserine, but they don't believe he meant to die.
يحب يوصل صوت الناس البعاد، يحب يعرف، فهمت كيفاش؟ يحب يعني يعطي إيماج البلايص ماهيش معروفة، يعطي تصويرة حقيقية، يوصل الحقيقة. يعني ما نتخيلوش في أصل في عائلتنا وفي هو في يعني في الأفكار متاعو في حياتنا الكل ما كناش نتخيلوه أصل، يعني صدمة، مصدومين.
They're not the only Tunisian family living through this pain. In 2010, street vendor Mohamed Bouazizi set himself alight in a nearby city. His act sparked the Jasmine Revolution. That brought down the president of 23 years, Zine El Abidine Ben Ali. While Tunisia is no longer a dictatorship, people see parallels between Bouazizi and Zorgi's actions.
المنوال هذا قاعد يخلي في الشباب يعمل في نوع نتاع التعبيرات هذه على مواضيع 10 سنين تقريبا.
Borhen Yahyaoui was Zorgi's friend. He's also a journalist in Kasserine. He says people have lost faith that the government will help.
لازم الناس والمسكين بزمام الأمور نرجعوا للامل، لازم ينثروا الامل ولازم يبثوا الامل في شباب، خاطر كي نشوفوا زاده اللي كاتيجوري نتاع الناس اللي تقدم على الانتحار او تهدد بالانتحار هي سيدي جون، هم من الشباب. والشباب شنو مشاكل الاساسيه؟ المشاكل الاساسيه هي نتاع بطاله، نتاع مشاكل اجتماعيه واقتصاديه بالاساس، معناتها ولت نوعيه من التعبيرات.
Yahyaoui says his friend's message about life in this impoverished part of the country isn't being heard by those in power.
في آخر الأسابيع في ولاية القصرين اللي فيها وصل الاحتقان إلى أن صحافي شاب رحمه الله يعني أضرم في روحه النار في ظروف إن شاء الله الأبحاث تعطيها لنا فهسنا في الظروف هذه.
In 2011, thousands of protesters took to the streets, calling for freedom and dignity. 8 years on, it's clear Tunisians have the freedom to express themselves. Supporters of different political parties are now out on the streets in Tunis. The police are also out in force to protect demonstrators. But many feel they haven't yet achieved dignity.
In the Tunisian mind means that decent life means freedom, but it means also decent life means to have a job, to live decently, to live protected from any type of terrorism. And this is really difficult to achieve so far, and it begins to be more and more difficult.
Ramdani is hopeful that Tunisia's democratic experience will succeed. But he says it's threatened by the public being frustrated by the lack of economic development.
We have to think that people really are angry and they're looking forward to have their problems solved. So if we don't think about that, if we don't sit together, if we don't think about the danger that Tunisia is facing, we are not going to get anywhere. And they should know, we are now at crossroads.
Nearly a decade into its post-revolution life, Tunisia's evolution to full democracy is on a rocky path. It's still in the economic malaise that triggered the end of autocratic rule, and has introduced austerity measures as part of a deal for an IMF loan of $2.9 billion. Today, the unemployment rate for young people is about 36%. Inflation is sitting at about 7.5%. But wages haven't kept pace, so people's purchasing power has shrunk. Successive governments have tried and failed to kickstart the faltering economy, while learning how to govern in a newly formed democracy. It's one of the main challenges facing MPs across the political spectrum. And it's a key to giving Tunisians the dignity they have long demanded. For MPs like Nazma Akhtar, that's a mission that can only be achieved through democratic means.
As we solve the political problems, so we have democratic institutions, we have freedom of expressions, we have all the kind of basis for a real democracy in Tunisia, we're going to do all the reforms that are needed from this country to give real dignity to everyone, every citizen, from the north, from the internal regions, from the south, from everywhere.
That will take time. Right now, there's no solution in sight to address these problems. Which is maybe why Abdulrazak Zorgi felt he had to get the world's attention. So how will he be remembered by those closest to him?
إنسان يعني قدم روحه يعني شهيد، قدم روحه لبلاده، ضحى بروحه على خاطر بلاده، على خاطر الناس يعني الضعاف والناس اللي بطالة.
Natalie Pohonen for the Newsmakers in Kasserine, Tunisia.
Well, to discuss this, I'm joined now from Tunis by the Tunisian Secretary of State for Sport, Ahmed Ghaloul. He's also an advisor to the former Prime Minister. Also in Tunis, we have the president of the Center for the Study of Islam and Democracy, Redouane Masmoudi. And joining us from Ghent, Belgium, is author, journalist and political analyst Khalid Diab. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Ahmed Ghaloul, let me start with you. Do you respect the right of many Tunisians right now, 8 years on since the revolution, to ask, was it worth it?
Well, the question is really a good question, whether it is worth it, because this big change, we have to keep questioning it. And I would say that it is really worth it. It's worth it because the revolution is an expression, is a free expression of the Tunisian population. It was a free expression of the Tunisian population without the interference of the elite or anyone who would come and claim it for itself. So after decades of oppression, the Tunisian population, the free people of Tunisia, they rose up and they took to the streets and got their freedom. So it is really worth it.
Okay, so let's ask, what does freedom mean then? Because if people see that the economy is in a mess, that government ministers are corrupt, that somebody might be a university graduate and they still can't find a job, what difference does it make if you name it Bin Ali's Tunisia or democratic Tunisia? The situation for millions of especially young people is still the same. So again, I go back to the beginning. Has enough changed in order to justify that the country has had a successful revolution?
Well, I mean, these problems, which you are right in mentioning them, they did not start with a revolution. Basically, the revolution came up because of the existence of those problems, either corruption, economic crisis, social degradation, and all these issues, which we are still confronting and which we are still striving to go over them. Taking an oppressive regime out is not the end of the story. It is basically the starting point towards the road of freedom and dignity. We've just passed 8 years since the revolution. Since now the Tunisian population, the Tunisian people, are free to decide and able to bring change about. This is the big change.
Okay.
The big change is now we can say that we can decide what will be our future, which we were not able to do before.
Okay, and there were multiple votes since the revolution. Khalid Diab, has the country been able to build democratic institutions over the past 8 years?
Well, considering it's only been 8 years, I think what Tunisia has managed to build has been remarkable. I mean, revolutions can usually take generations to deliver results. Tunisia has managed to, first kind of in the contemporary Arab world, or among the first, of peaceful transitions of power without coups, without revolutions, without violence. It's like considering the amount of change that has occurred in Tunisia, it's happened peacefully. There's been pluralistic transition which has been built on compromise and on consensus building. And now Tunisia is the proud owner of a functioning democracy, although there is a certain amount of dysfunction, obviously, in the government apparatus. But considering where Tunisia was and where it is today, I think it's rather remarkable what they've achieved, especially in terms of rights, human rights, women's rights, minority rights.
Okay, and we'll build on that in a moment or two. Redouane Masmoudi, as a lot of people say, follow the traffic. UNHCR and IOM have numbers that show that over the past year, the numbers have dramatically spiked of Tunisians who are getting on those boats, heading across the Mediterranean towards Lampedusa and elsewhere, willing to risk it all. So it was averaging about 2,000 people per year a few years ago. Now it's up to about 5,000. Who's to blame for that? Why are young people leaving?
I would say that Tunisia has succeeded on the political front, has achieved a lot politically in terms of building a real stable and genuine democracy. But on the economic front, I don't think we have succeeded in really improving the conditions on the ground, in attracting investments, in creating new jobs and opportunities for young people. I don't think the economy today is worse than it was before the revolution. I think it's about the same, but it is well below the expectations of the people, especially the younger generation, who participated in the revolution and who have huge expectations and who thought that the revolution will bring them prosperity, will bring them jobs, will bring them economic well-being. And that has not happened yet. And I think that the government now needs to focus on the question of the economy. I think in the first 4 years, from 2011 until 2014, the focus was on the political transition and the constitution and the elections. From 2015 until 2018, the main focus has been on defeating extremism, which was a real and serious threat in 2015 and 16. And I think we have achieved a huge progress on that front as well. But now I think the focus has to be on how do we create new jobs and new economic growth and opportunities.
And Ahmed Ghalul, who should the government listen to? The IMF, which is saying tighten the belts and embark on austerity, or the people on the streets and the trade unions who are saying more jobs, more growth, more investment, and increase the wages? What sort of plan should the government follow?
Well, we are first concerned to listen to the people, really, because the government represents the will of the people. We are not there to represent other wills. However, we cannot work towards the stability and the progress and prosperity of the economy and social stability in Tunisia without listening to the stakeholders, corporations or governments or the regional situation, which is either supporting or resisting the progress in Tunisia. But the government is meant, and we are meant to listen to the people, and we are meant to strive so that we can bring what they put us for in the government. So we are here to work for the people, to express their will, and to give them hope that change is actually happening. And even though it is slow, but we are progressing forward. That is why the main criteria, the main slogan of this government is stability. We need stability to be able to progress. We need stability to be able to build. We need stability to be able to create national prosperity.
Redwan Masmoudi, what does it mean symbolically that 8 years after Mohamed Bouazizi self-immolated, we have someone like Abdurrazak Zorgi doing the same for the same reasons? Is that an embarrassment to the entire leadership?
I think it is a disappointment to the entire leadership that on the economic front we have not answered the needs of the people and the younger generation. I think that we also, as Mr. Ahmed Ghalul has mentioned, we have to listen to the people, but also we have to be open and frank with the people, and we have to explain to them the real problems, the real challenges, and we have to create a national dialogue on the economy. I think this is what has been missing in Tunisia since the revolution. There is no clear vision. There is no clear program for how do we create jobs, how do we turn the economy around and create jobs and opportunities for younger generation. Just keeping or answering the strikes, and we have a lot of strikes, demanding wage increases is not the answer. If we just keep increasing wages, we will have inflation and the prices will rise, but the standard of living will not improve, and the standard of living might actually deteriorate. So we have to have a real widespread and very popular national dialogue with the people to explain and to understand what is economic growth. How do we create economic growth? Certainly, wage increases are not the answer. We have to create a new environment. We have to create an environment that encourages entrepreneurship, that encourages innovation, competitive businesses to prosper and grow in Tunisia. So there is a mindset, I think, that has to change among the population as a whole.
And Khalid Diab, talking about the mindset, and I know you said that this was remarkable over the past 8 years, what Tunisia has managed to achieve, but are we looking at it as being remarkable only because compared to the other countries that experienced the same convulsions of revolutions, Tunisia did okay relative to Libya and Syria? Is that a healthy way of thinking that, okay, well, it's not Syria, it's not Libya, so it must be doing okay?
I'm not talking about just relative to its neighbors. You know, it's in absolute terms, politically, Tunisia has made remarkable progress. France took several republics and decades of convulsion and violence and wars before it became, you know, a fully fledged democracy. There's regression in democratic stakes in numerous countries in Europe, in America, even in Turkey. You know, the democracy is under threat everywhere. So it's remarkable that at a time when democracy is on a back foot across the world, Tunisia is progressing democratically. The economy is a different question, and if you would like me to make my remarks on that, I can. Yeah. So the economy, I agree that there are certain domestic issues that have, you know, scuppered growth in Tunisia and its ability to develop through decades of corruption and mismanagement and so on. But I disagree on the point about wage increases. I think Tunisia needs to, it has a minimum wage, but it's not a livable minimum wage. I think there needs to be a realistic, livable minimum income for every Tunisian in order to deliver on this, the promises of the revolution and human dignity and economic justice. Tunisia, one of the problems it's faced is not that the revolution has not that the change of revolution has destroyed the economy, but that the revolution has not changed the economic infrastructure sufficiently. You know, there's still huge inequality within Tunisian society, and this needs to be addressed through fair taxation, through actual taxation, because, you know, like in many other countries in the region, Tunisia does not collect enough tax, you know, so it needs to tax better and more effectively and more efficiently, and not just through sort of sales taxes and so on, but also through taxes on wealth, on income and so on, to put in place a more effective tax system. And on top of that, you know, all the Tunisia's economic woes aren't all self-inflicted. You know, Tunisia is a small country with a small economy, which is, you know, at the mercy of greater forces globally and regionally. The problems next door in Libya have had a knock-on effect in Tunisia. The turmoil across the region has had a knock-on effect. The global turmoil has had a knock-on effect on Tunisia, and also the poor distribution of wealth globally. You know, when you have a corporation whose revenue, individual corporations whose revenue is far greater than Tunisia's, you know, you get an idea of the scale of the problem.
Right. Redwan, what do you think? You think Khalid should be hired as an economic advisor for Tunisia? He's saying tax the rich and improve and increase the minimum wage.
Well, I think that Tunisia has plenty of economic experts and professors and people who work in various economic fields. And they basically all agree on the kind of reforms that need to take place. The problem is, how do we explain these reforms to the citizen, to the common citizen? How can we engage in a dialogue with the citizens, not with the experts? Because I think if you bring all the economic experts in Tunisia or in the world, it's very clear what Tunisia has to do. It has to improve its fight against corruption. It has to fight against tax evasion. It has to tax the rich and help the poor more, and maybe raise the minimum the minimum income or minimum salary on people. So there are reforms that we all know, but we have not explained these reforms, and some of these reforms are frankly painful. to the people, or especially to certain classes of people who are benefiting from the current regime. And so we have to engage. I think what really is missing is a national dialogue with the common citizens, not just with the experts, to explain what the reforms are and why they are needed and what kind of impact they will have on the economy. We have not had this dialogue yet, I think.
Okay, well, it's hard to believe that it's been more than 8 years since the revolution. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure talking to you here on the Newsmakers. Ahmed Khalul, Radwan Masmoudi and Khalid Diab. Thanks again. As Tunisians fight for jobs, Bangladeshis are demanding higher wages. After the break, we ask if protests will improve the lives of the people who make your clothes. And is this kid racist or misunderstood? We debate whether the internet jumped to the wrong conclusions. That's up next on the Newsmakers. They work for some of the top clothing brands in the world: Nike, Zara, H&M and Calvin Klein. But for a $30 billion industry inside Bangladesh, the average garment worker takes home $3 a day. Even by Bangladeshi standards, those wages are way below average, and labor unions have had enough. Protests have caused cities to come to a standstill, and employers have used a carrot and stick approach by offering raises to some while firing hundreds of others. Who's to blame for this mess? Well, it might be you. Haider Abbasi explains.
Their anger has turned into violence. Factory workers fight police after facing tear gas and water cannon. At least one person has been killed and 50 wounded. Thousands have been on strike to demand better pay. The government offered a rise, but protesters say it's not enough.
I've been working in garments for the last 10 years. Is the value of this experience worth only a rise of $6? Why only $6? What did we do wrong?
52 factories have stopped production since the protest began 2 weeks ago. But after many went back to work after the strike, they realized they no longer had jobs. One union leader says around 750 workers had been laid off. Factory owners say they were fired for vandalizing equipment. These demonstrators all work in the clothing industry, and it's big business in Bangladesh. The industry is worth more than $30 billion a year. It's the second largest in the world after China. Bangladesh supplies to global brands such as Walmart, Primark and Tesco. Although the industry is highly profitable, the people making the clothes get paid little, around $96 a month. But union leaders are demanding $215 a month to make up for the rise in living costs. The strike is a major challenge for Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, who was re-elected to a fourth term in December. Her government says the wage rise shouldn't happen too quickly, or it could kill competition in the garment industry. Factory owners have warned all workshops will be shut down if the staff continue to protest. So are garment workers in Bangladesh treated unfairly? And will the government agree to their demands? Haider Abbasi, The Newsmakers.
Let's go to our guest in Dhaka now. Nazma Akhtar is a former child garment worker who now runs her own union, the Somalito Garments Ceramic Federation. Thank you very much for joining us, Nazma. Broadly speaking, the strike and the protest, is it justified?
Thank you. Actually, that the strike with garments workers in Bangladesh is justified. Actually, workers need more money and workers need better life. That is the important. Which is justified or unjustified is not the important. Because, you know, in Bangladesh, living cost is very high. Workers, the minimum wage increase in Bangladesh government is, the entry point is a 95 USD, and that is for the entry level. But the who are working in the factory, the sewing machine operator, their grading is not appropriated, and they are not giving appropriate grading. So that is the anger of the workers. Also, the mainly that the basic salary is reducing, where the basic salary worker can get their wages, they can get their bonus, overtime benefit, all kind of things. When this kind of things are reduced, of course the workers should be raise their voice and protest. Of course, it is justified, and it's not fair when this kind of decision come from the government.
Nazma, there's a lot of people around the world who are watching this who are currently wearing clothing made in these factories in Bangladesh. Brand names bought at outlets and malls around the world, and people are buying them at affordable prices, and they have nice labels and they're good quality. What's your message to them about the conditions that the garment workers in Bangladesh work under?
This is the very important thing. The consumer and who are buying this product and getting very good price, and also a lot of sales, and all the multinational, they are earning a lot of money and a lot of profit, but our workers are hunger. They don't have sufficient food. They don't have right at mass freedom of association and collective bargaining. They are not addressing living wages. And people are beaten. You see, number of workers are arrested and the blacklisted. So this is the scenario happened when the workers want more wages. So I think the who are the multinational and also consumer to respect workers, to pay fair and decent working condition, where the worker can get freedom of association, collective bargaining, union rights. Very important. It's not addressing. In Bangladesh, less than 10% workers are the unionized, and over 90% are ununionized. So that is also very difficult moment. So the multinational and big brand who are producing here, they should pay fair, they should pay, and they have to respect workers and workers' rights, because workers has no dignity, they have no respect, because people are coming to our country to producing goods, make a lot of goods, cheap labor. The human, the worker cannot be cheap, because you have to pay fair what we produce for you, what make for you. So we make your leggings, we make your t-shirt, we make your shirt, skirt, everything. But we make you happy, we make you decent, but we are not decent working condition, and we don't have decent life. We have a lot of malnutrition problem. Women are retired after 40 years old. Children are separate. There is not addressing daycare center, women nutrition, women health, skill. Lot of things are challenging. Poor working condition, poor living condition. If these are not changing from the Western company or consumer are not concentrated, all the time people are getting cheap or discount or buy one get one free. Nothing is cheap in this world.
Understood.
Somebody are paying. Who are paying? That is the workers' blood and sweat. So this kind of things need to be changed, because our number of workers was arrested. Number of workers are thousands of workers are lost their job. Many workers are blacklisted. This is not fair. This is not justified, and this is not good. This is not. It's not a justice. It's an injustice way are treated our workers.
Yes, it's interesting because looking at it from our perspective from the outside, it seemed as if there was a deal where the authorities agreed to raise the wages, but then people go to work and they find out that they are fired. So clearly there's still a major issue here and a major standoff. Let me ask you, what's your message to Sheikh Hasina?
My message to our Prime Minister, to the salary she increased and her initiative, that is we are welcoming, but the basic salary is reducing. Also the things to try to increase more. That is my request to my Prime Minister to consider this. Also my message to our Prime Minister, please also ensuring freedom of association and collective bargaining, where the worker can negotiation their salary, and they can increase their salary. Also, they can concentrate their proper productivity. And also, my Prime Minister, also I need to request that the Bangladesh, we are producing very basic and low price item, how we have to make high-tech industry, and how we can make good products, and how we have to ensure good working condition and infrastructure.
Right.
And also, I request my Prime Minister also look after on the workers' rationing, health, education, housing system should be ensuring. If I know this industry is very important for Bangladesh workers, especially women empowerment. So in this regard, our minister should, Prime Minister should also give a lot of skill training and to our women workers. They can get
Understood,
more,
Nazma.
earn higher wages.
Right. Nazma, before I let you go, I'm curious, how old were you when you started to work in a factory?
I started working in the garments factory when I was 11 years old with my mother.
Wow.
So it is also very hard and sad time also we are facing. So still in the ready-made garments, there is not much child labor is working, but many young workers also working.
Right.
So we are poor, but we need to how to change our poor living condition, because we are producing a lot of goods for international company, but we are still not proper food and housing and sanitation and drinking water.
Right.
So these are things are big challenging still in Bangladesh.
Okay, Nazma Akhtar, I thank you very much for talking to us here on the Newsmakers.
In hindsight, I wish we could have walked away and avoided the whole thing. But I can't say that I'm sorry for listening to him and standing there.
A standoff between a high school Trump supporter and a Native American activist has become a symbol of the cultural divide in the United States. The debate is over this video and whether it shows an arrogant high schooler mocking a war veteran. Well, millions on social media seem to think that's the case. But have they jumped to conclusions? And is there more to this story than what one YouTube clip can show? Well, what's going on in America's culture war to spark such a debate? To discuss this, we're joined now from Calabasas, California, by conservative Hollywood director Robbie Starbuck, who's also a friend of the Trump family. And in Huntington Beach is writer and activist Sabina Khan Ibarra. I thank you both for joining us here on the Newsmakers. Sabina, the incident happened and it blew up, right? It's invariably going to blow up on social media and then traditional media picks up on it. Was it a microcosm of the current culture wars right now in the United States?
Definitely, for sure. The issue with, so I would like to say that for this particular issue, there wasn't enough information before the hashtag blew up. But I do feel that it is something that I'm glad did blow up, and there's something we are discussing, because it is definitely a reflection of what is going on in the United States as a whole. So I'm glad we're having the conversation, even if what happened, I have issues with the way it happened.
Okay, so for example, you had this kid, right, 15 years old, center of attention now. My producers tell me it's called call-out culture. I'm too old, So call-out culture, this thing happens, people get angry. Some would feel the kid has been targeted unfairly. Would you agree with that?
I think they shouldn't, like I said, we shouldn't have jumped to conclusions and, chosen a side. But I think once research had done, I think it was very important that this issue did come to a light and that the boy was held accountable for his actions, along with everybody else that was involved in this issue.
Robbie Starbuck, is it important that we're talking about this on international television today?
Yes, it is. And first, I'd like to start out by making a correction. The man that the boy was standing in front of is not a war veteran. His records were pulled yesterday. He lied about serving in the Vietnam War. He never even served overseas. In fact, his time in service, he went AWOL 4 times. So
okay, well, we're going to double check that, right? Okay, so Robbie, yeah, as far as we understand, he's a Vietnam War vet, but you're putting this out there. We'll double check it. and we'll issue a correction if it is true. Okay.
Other news organizations have confirmed the report. But yeah, no, feel free to check. I think part of the problem here is checking, so with that first video, it shows a very small part of the confrontation. And that's the problem with call-out culture, is that people are attaching to the very first thing that they see and reacting to it. There's another hour and a half of video where this group, where it starts. And that's with the Black Israelites. They called these boys horrible, horrible names, including a young black boy at Covington Catholic School was racially attacked by these guys. And his friends, all the boys from Covington Catholic, came to the defense of their friend who is a Black American. So these boys acted appropriately, and they did not approach these adults. The adults approached them. They were standing there waiting for their buses when the adults approached them. And the kids reacted, the best way they could to the situation. None of them said anything, racially divisive to anybody.
Sure, that is a bit debatable though, right? I mean, Robbie, because you can't, there's claims that racist statements were made and you can't quite make it out when you watch the full video, although eyewitnesses who were there say that racially charged statements were made by the boys. So we can't be absolutely certain, can we, Robbie?
I can see what's on video, and my eyes aren't lying to me, so I feel comfortable saying that the boys didn't say anything along those lines.
Right. Sabina, Robbie's saying ultimately everybody's made too much of a big deal of this, and it's an example of the negative aspect, the other side of the coin of call-out culture, rather than the positive one that you touched upon earlier on. Tell me.
So in this particular instance, there were other videos showing that people from the boys from this group had also heckled some girls or some women that were, protesting or walking by. But in terms of the call-out culture and the negative aspect, like I said, is that sometimes we don't do enough homework. But I think the call-out culture is something that people who are in the place of privilege or people who are in the place of power are using as a way to not be held accountable for things that they should be held accountable for. Why was this happening? Why were these? Why was this boy standing there?
Tell me, Sabina, sorry to interrupt you. Tell me, this kid, Nick Sandman, with his Make America Great Again hat, what should he be held accountable for? What did he do?
So so I don't know enough about this, but from what I see, that I think that if these boys, from what I've read, they left a supervised group and they went off and they did this. What they did is they surrounded.
Okay, let her finish, Robbie.
That's
finish your point,
they were
Sabina.
waiting for the buses for their school.
Okay, finish your point, Sabina, and then Robbie can come in.
Okay, so so these boys are heckling. There's a lot more of these boys. There was, I think, 5 Israelites. There were a few Native Americans, and these boys were, even if they weren't doing anything physically, they hadn't said anything. The presence was a dominating presence, a presence of threat. And the way that they were heckling and shouting, their chants, in response to this native who was elder, who was beating the drum, is something that says a lot about how we are. And the Maga hats in itself is a very antagonistic piece of clothing to be wearing in front of natives.
Certainly, of course. If you're on the other side of this in the debate within the United States, the other half of the country, that's debatable as well. Clearly, the hat itself is enough to irritate people at the very least. Robbie, some housekeeping before I get your response. Do you trust Snopes?
No.
Well, okay. Well, anyway, I don't have my phone on me in studio, but my producer just had a look on Snopes, and they say that the claims by conservative media that Nathan Phillips was not a war vet can be neither proven nor unproven. right now. That's where they stand on this as fact checkers.
Snopes doesn't have a service record, but you can go to other major media outlets, search it. Major media outlets like Fox have confirmed it.
Okay, so they're saying what Fox is saying can't be proven at the moment. I'm going to hang a little question mark over that, give you the benefit of the doubt for now, but respond to Sabina.
I would say the only thing I would agree with Sabina on, because there's some stuff there that just, I mean, I can't even touch. It's kind of ridiculous to treat these boys this way. But the only positive about call-out culture is that, you know, we've seen a situation with the Me Too movement in the United States. I think it is, and around the world. And I think that is a net positive, you know, to hold people accountable for their bad behavior, especially towards women, but towards men too. And I think that when we hold adults accountable for how they treat children, then call-out culture is a good thing. So there's sort of a reverse call-out happening now for how the way adults jump to conclusions about these kids. And we've seen a lot of apologies. In fact, I posted something about a Congresswoman, Ilhan Omar, here, asking her to delete her tweet because it was filled with lies about the boys. And Trump Jr. retweeted it, and Ilhan has now deleted her tweet. And this has happened across multiple, you know, Democrat Congress people, newsmakers all around the globe, where they jump to conclusions. Now they're deleting their tweets, and it teaches them a lesson. Adults should not be jumping to conclusions about children, and we shouldn't be attacking children, trying to dox children and ruin their lives. I mean, this is attached to those boys for the rest of their lives, and they didn't say anything wrong.
Sabina, I'm someone who came across the Black Hebrew Israelites, as they call themselves, when I lived in DC. They used to hang out outside the Chinatown metro station. They have a tendency to raise the temperature wherever they are and be pretty provocative, right? Might all of this be one major overreaction to the fact that this pretty hardcore group was just setting the place on fire, at least the tone, and therefore it created a bit of tension, and it's now blown out of proportion?
There's many different protests going on. Initially, the boys thought they were Muslim, from what I've read. And so even the mother of one of the boys had said, oh, they thought they were Muslim, and then they later find out they're Israelites. The reason maybe the attack shouldn't have happened towards the boys, but the culture that is there, where these, white males are in, in this dominant position. And it's just a reflection of, like I said, what's going on in culture. And that, I think, is what everybody had a reaction to. And maybe instead of talking specifically about the boys, we talk about the parents and the culture that created such an event to occur. Talk about the, how this country is being polarized by two very different ideologies, or many different, but it's somehow, like I said, polarized in two. These white men in power with privilege, these boys will grow up to be men in power. And then the fact is that, again, the marginalized are usually the ones doing the calling out. I mean, the guest said, Me Too movement, the Ferguson, Missouri, we never heard, or we hardly heard about police brutality. Smaller things. There's constantly the marginalized who call upon a call out. So then after this event, the proof is the boy was able to secure PR to help him, change the narrative or form the narrative and to give a perspective. Whereas the other people, first of all, we're not given the same platform, the opportunity.
Okay, so let me ask you about that, or let me rather take that and pass it on to Robbie. As the white male on the panel here, firstly, do you consider yourself in a privileged position? And is Sabina right that it takes those who are punching up from the bottom to shed light on these things? And do you agree that the mainstream, if you like, decided to bend over backwards to give the young boy a voice now in the aftermath, and that is a part of his privilege?
No, I mean, it's ridiculous. I'm actually Cuban. I'm the son of a Cuban refugee. So I would technically be one of those marginalized groups she's talking about, and I think it's ridiculous. I don't have any problem with white privilege. I think that white privilege doesn't exist. I think that economic privilege exists. I mean, are those kids not allowed to wait for their bus on the top of steps because they're white? I mean, it sounds like entirely ridiculous. And I think anybody with a brain thinks that it's entirely ridiculous, that these kids can't stand and wait for their bus. And I agree with what you said about the Black Israelites. They're a group that they provoke people intentionally. They're trying to create situations like this, and I blame them the most for what happened. What they did was just, I mean, if you've watched the video, I don't want to repeat the things they said. It's grotesque. You can't say worse things than what they said. So, you know, no, I don't agree with her at all. I think everything she said is foolish.
Robbie? It's 2019. We're, what, 2.5 years into the Trump presidency. What does it say about America today? Is the country, at least culturally, maybe not fully politically, but at least culturally as divided as ever, as exemplified by the discussion we're having now and the aftermath of this amplification of this incident?
Absolutely. I mean, you couldn't have said it better. We are the most divided I've ever seen culturally. We're living in a time where I feel like because of the proliferation of social media and all these different news sources and everything, we're living in 1,000 fragmented realities. And when you have 1,000 fragmented realities, you have all these people who feel like they're being gaslit by other people because what they know to be true is suddenly challenged in a way that certain people can't deal with what's facing them in terms of something questioning their reality. So we need to get better at teaching people, you know, how to go through this discourse in a healthy way and how we can move forward together despite disagreement, because what's going on now just isn't healthy. It's not something that we can sustain.
Well, I mean, this is a good example of healthy discourse. The two of you are on opposite ends of this, but it was really interesting chatting to both of you. I hope you both come onto the program sometime soon. Thanks again. That's all for this edition of The Newsmakers with me, Imran Garda. Check out more of our stories on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe. Until next time, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.